What's up, guys, and welcome back to See You Out There, and welcome to another Wednesday how-to video. Today we're going to talk about sight fishing reds. Today we're going to talk about what to look for, when to look for them, and how to target them when you do see them. It's not as hard as you guys think it is. It's actually pretty easy to sight fish them. You just got to find the fish, and then the rest of it takes care of itself, guys. So let's get into it. Sight fishing redfish. Yo! Alright guys, welcome back to See You Out There, and welcome back to another how-to video. So like we talked about in the intro, today we're going to talk about sight fishing reds. There's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of mystery around sight fishing reds, and I want to explain to you guys in this video, it's actually very easy. It's not hard to sight fish red. The most difficult thing you'll run into when sight fishing is either not having the right craft to get to where the fish are, or just being in the wrong place. So sight fishing's not difficult because the fish are presenting themselves to you. They're either tailing because the water's ultra low, they're moving down the shoreline and birds are working on them, so that's very easy to notice, or they're in crystal clear water cruising and looking for bait. Any three of these situations that you find yourself in sight fishing, the reds present themselves very easily. Now they don't always bite, but finding them isn't a problem, and it's not as difficult as you would think. So let's talk about ways to see redfish and the ways they present themselves and what the situations are. So the first situation we're going to talk about is tailing redfish. You always see the pictures, you always see the videos, you always see the footage of tailing redfish. Tailing redfish are by far my favorite way to find them. And typically you find tailing redfish either in extremely shallow water, or they're in a standard feeding area where they feed regularly, but the tide is lower than normal. The fish are head down, they're grazing. Typically they're in a group, 2, 5, 10, 15 fish, and they're feeding together. They're grazing, their heads are down with that underslung mouth, and the reason their tails are up is because they're digging around in the mud, in the oysters, or in the grass, and their tails are up while they're foraging. This is a very good time to target redfish because they're focused on feeding, and it's easy to present a lure to them, and it's easy to get them to bite. The trick with this is typically if they're tailing, you're in extremely shallow water and you're in close proximity to these fish. And noises, boat wakes, pressure wakes coming off the bow of your boat, stepping down off of a platform really hard, a large foot strike on the boat can spook these fish. A bad cast can spook these fish. There's a lot of things that can spook tailing redfish. So first and foremost, you've got to be able to get to the area where these fish are tailing. Back in the marshes on low tide going out, or on grass beds low tide going out, this is typically where you'll see tailing redfish. Temperature doesn't have as much to do with it. I find redfish tailing as much in the winter as I do right in the middle of August, early September, this time of the year. A lot of people assume that redfish don't like hot water like a trout doesn't, but you'll find that when you start sight fishing for reds and you start looking for reds and you find areas where they live and then you begin sight fishing, that water temperature doesn't affect these guys. Noon on August 15th, far back as you can go, you'll find redfish feeding and tailing. I'll add a video in right here from one of my videos here recently where it was the middle of August, it was the middle of the day, it was very, very hot, and the redfish were in 6 inches of water up on a shoreline feeding. So let's add that in here now. Right here, right here. Come on, little fella, I see you. Right there.
There he is. That was awesome. He's in here splashing up here in this super shallow stuff. I pitched that bugs to him. He ate it. We are up in here skinny, boys. Sorry I'm whispering. I'm trying not to scare these dang fish. Come on, come on. This fish is wearing me out. He is all the way under the skiff. Look at that. That's a 5.5, 6 pound fish. What'd it do? I said, what'd it do?
So as you can see, the temperature doesn't affect redfish as much as people think. Dead of the summer is one of my favorite times to get skinny and look for them. I have a few spots in West Bay and a few spots in East Bay that I prefer to sight fish, and I prefer to do it in the summer months. I prefer, if I'm looking for tailors, I want a low tide or a low tide going out. I want something causing that tide to be lower than normal, and I'm looking for tails. Water clarity is not as important when you're looking for tailing redfish because they're giving themselves away. They're flagging for you. Very slow movements, very slow on your trolling motor. If you've got a Minn Kota trolling motor you're moving with, don't have it up on 6 and 7, have it down on 1 and 2. Slowly looking, lock your feet in, pay attention to what you see, and try to be quiet. It's stealthy. It's like deer hunting. When you're looking for tailing redfish, be quiet, move slowly, try not to spook the fish. When you hook a fish out of a school of tailors, don't throw on top of the tailors. Don't throw in the middle of the school. Throw in the direction they're moving. If they're grazing from right to left, throw the lure past them to the direction they're traveling, and then slowly bring the lure back to them. And what you'll find is if you let those tailing fish graze to your lure and then give it a pop, they'll react to it because they think they spooked the shrimp out of the grass or out of the shell or out of the mud, and that's what they're looking for. They're nosing around looking for stuff, and as that shrimp pops up out of the grass, they feed on it. So bring that lure, throw it past them, bring it in line where you think they're going to feed to, and then let them spook that bait. And when you spook it, you're guaranteed those fish are going to fire up on it. If they're not firing up on your bait and they don't seem interested, it's what you're throwing. You're either throwing too large of a profile bait, they're looking for grass shrimp, and you're throwing something that mimics a mullet. Change your lures. If they're not interested, change it. One thing that's amazing to throw to tailing redfish is a fly, a shrimp imitation. If you're a fly fisherman, avid or budding, brand new, and you want to catch a redfish on fly, the best way to do it is to find tailors, because you can take that shrimp imitation, that gurgler fly, that topwater, and you can put casts past them and bring that fly into their range, and they'll eat that little thing every time, guys. That's a wonderful way to get into fly fishing for reds, is on tailing redfish. So like I said, if they're not eating your lure, if you're throwing a 3JD and you're throwing a full size, or you're throwing a hooked up baits and you're throwing a Brad Shad, or you're throwing a JRZ, you're throwing a full size lure, and they're not eating it, the only reason they're not eating is because it's too large of a bait. Start downsizing that bait, down from a 4-inch bait to a 3-inch bait. Take it down to there to something like a Bugs fishing fly, the little Bugs Flats lures. Take it down something like that, or to Mirror Lure Little John. Keep reducing that size. Take that jig head, if you're throwing a jig head, off, and put that twist lock 16th ounce owner shank weighted hook like we've talked about before. If you're not familiar with our past videos, we have a video back in our catalog where we discuss the 3 best ways, or the 5 best ways to rig lures for redfish, and we talk about all these in there. So we won't discuss it again in this video, but if you need to know how to rig lures for sight fishing, go back to our 5 best ways to rig lures for redfish video, and it'll explain all this to you. The second way we're going to talk about finding redfish is schools of redfish. Schools of redfish give themselves away on the Texas coast by one of 2 ways. Either by digging up mud, they'll stir up mud and the water is nice and green color and you see a patch of dirty, muddy water. Well, that's an indication that something's feeding there. If it's 3 or 4 foot deep, that's a clear indication that there's redfish or there's gaff tops. There's something feeding, and you're getting a large mud boil and you're getting a slick coming off of that. That's a good way to sight fish reds. You're not sight fishing them particularly, but you're sight fishing an element or a key that they're giving you. They're giving you a sign, we're here. My favorite way is on a shoreline, shallow shoreline, they'll gather up in schools and they'll cruise that shoreline like bullies, just grazing down, eating everything in their way. And there'll be white birds, there'll be pelicans, there'll be seagulls, there'll be terns, there'll be something. And those birds will stay right on top of them. As that school redfish is feeding, those birds will stay there. Birds are the easiest way to find schools of redfish. If you're in a marsh system or near a marsh system, and there are lots of birds hovering above the water, dive bombing down into the water, they're not going to be 20 foot high, they're going to be 5-10 foot high. If you see a group of birds working a shoreline, I guarantee you that's a school redfish. That's a clear indication. If I'm in the marsh, I'm always scanning 100 yards, a mile away, however far I can see. I'm always watching for bird activity, because you're guaranteed if you can get to those birds and quietly approach where they're at, or set up down the shore from them, if they're flying from left to right, and you can set up a couple 100 yards down from them, they're over a redfish school. And that's the easiest way to find them, because you can power pole down, you can anchor down, you can get out of the boat and walk to them, whatever your method is, and you can wait for those birds, and they're a clear indication where that school redfish is at. And as they get closer, you'll see the redfish under it, humped up, backs out of the water, doing their thing, feeding in a school. And it may be 2, it may be 200. You never know what they're on. And it's the same presentation. Take that lure, throw it up against the grass line, throw it ahead of them, and let it sit. And let that herd of redfish that's coming down that shoreline, let them get to you. Don't be impatient. Don't throw in them. Don't spook them. Throw ahead of them. Get the lure ready. And as they get to your lure, that second that they're right there your lure's at, give it some hops, subtle movements, and I guarantee as soon as it moves, they're going to attack it. Here's a video of this exact scenario where I was fishing a shoreline and I saw birds working. I identified the birds. They were coming to me. I power pulled down and I waited for those fish, and those fish came right to me. So check out this footage of a school of herding redfish. That's really what they're doing. They're schooled up and they're herding down like cattle coming down the shoreline. So check out this footage of me jacking one on the shoreline.
Guys, I don't know if you can see this. That is a telltale sign of a school of redfish feeding right there. Oh, son. Oh, yep. That's what it is. There's a school of redfish right here in front of us feeding. Oh, I hope we get a shot on these fish. Here they come. Look at them. Holy crap. Look at them right here, guys. Where are they at? There they are, right there. Got him. Got one. How many's in there? Holy cow, that's a big school of fish. Holy cow. Stay low, fella. Stay low. Stay low. That's what we came for right there, guys. That freaking school of fish was just feeding down the shoreline. I couldn't tell how many there were because it was dirty. But I mean, you just put it in front of him and bam, it's on. That's what we came for right there. Oh, I need Corey here with me. We could have just doubled up on them for sure. All right, let's get this fish out of the boat and see if we can find that school again. Got my lucky rod back today. Come on.
All right, guys, so that's what you're looking for with herding redfish. The third way is pulling a flat. I know everybody doesn't have a pulling skiff. I know I'm in a unique situation here. Or trolling motoring shallow flats. In the wintertime in Galveston Marsh, the water gets crystal clear. The theory is, and the rumors are, that the water's always chocolatey. It gets gin clear in West Bay, it gets gin clear in East Bay, and it does it in the summer too, guys. Get back in the marshes, get back in there in the summer, get back in there in January, get back in there in spring, get back in there in fall. Those redfish live there year round, and that water gets gin clear. So the technique here is I'm going to find a flat, I'm going to find a shoreline, and I'm going to just work it. And I am purely looking to see them visually with my eyes. And I'm looking for redfish swimming, I'm looking for them grazing, I'm looking for singles, I'm looking for schools. These fish aren't tailing, these fish aren't up against the bank or the backside of all the birds on them. I am just looking for lone fish. This is something Corey and I do a lot. I pole her around. I'm on the poling platform. I've got a real good bird's eye view of what's going on. And we put the sun in our back. Always put the sun at your back, guys. Get the glare out of the way. If you're sight fishing, fish that you can't see, try to put the sun at your back and move away from it. And what they'll do is that the sun will light the water up. Then those fish are bronze, and you'll see them. What I always see first is I always see the pec fins. I always see that first. I always feel like they're lit up. And that's usually the first thing I see at a distance when I'm looking for a redfish, or I see that tail lit up. And then I'll make a move on a fish from there. You want to try to see redfish, free swimmers like this, as far away from the boat as possible. By the time you see them 10 feet off the boat, you've already spooked those fish. That fish is done. Take a few shots at him. You might surprise yourself and hook him. But in most cases, by the time you see him within 10, 15, 20 foot of the boat, he's on to you and he's gone. A way to tell if you spook that redfish is those same pec fins. Something I always look for, if a redfish has got his pec fins out and they're kind of flared out and he's kind of cruising, he's looking for bait. He's feeding. But if they ever fold those fins up beside them and they go into that torpedo shape and they're headed one direction, you have spooked that fish, and 9 times out of 10, he's not going to eat. He's on to you. His fins are folded back. He's on a mission to get away from you. He's not relaxed. He's not happy. He's not doing his thing. He is trying to get away from you to get to another area of the marsh to continue feeding. So we're poling along, we're trolling motor along, we're standing on a cooler, we've got a platform, we've got a burn bar, whatever our elevated position is, and we're looking for fish. So we're trying to see them as far away as possible, and the reason being is we want to present that bait. If you throw that bait at that fish's face, 9 times out of 10, he's going to turn and bug out. You boys in Louisiana, y'all got it easy. You can throw a lure and hit a redfish in the back and he'll turn around and eat it. That doesn't work in Florida. It doesn't work in Texas. It doesn't work anywhere else except for Louisiana. For some reason, y'all got the angriest redfish in the world, and them jokers just like to eat. Y'all are very fortunate. We do not have that leisure over here in Texas. So guys, you see that fish, he's moving right to left. It's exactly the same with the tailing fish. It's exactly the same with those herding fish with birds on them. Throw that lure past that fish and intersect his path with it. If he's moving this way and he's got his fins out, his pec fins are flopped down and he's lit up and he's looking good, he's searching. If you throw that across his back, he's gone. He's going to turn, he's going to fold his fins up, he's going to bug out. That fish is done. He will swim off, he will settle back down, he will eat later, but for that moment, he's done, he's gone. You see him swimming along? Throw that lure past him. Throw that hooked up baits Brad Shad past him and crank that joker to him and then drop it. Drop it, foot from his face, and then bounce it in front of it and let it settle. And what you'll find is as soon as he keys on it, if he turns, let it rest, he's on it, and that joker will bury his head in the mud to find that lure. Make sure he's got it. Make sure he's got it, and then put the wood to him. You got him. That's one of the most exciting bites in the world to me, because when they're tailing, you don't see them eat it. You feel them eat it. When they're herding down the bank, same thing. You don't see them eat it, you feel it. But when you sight fish a free swimmer and you throw that lure out past him and you drag that thing to his face and watch him eat it, there is nothing in this world better than that, guys. I've got a video. We've got a video. One of our first videos we ever did was Corey sight fishing her first ever redfish. I'm going to put a copy of that in right now, and you guys watch Corey sight fish her first ever red, and listen to the instruction. Bounce it, bounce it, bounce it, jack him. That's exactly what we did here, and this is, to me, the ultimate way to catch redfish.
That's a red.
That's a red. Oh, I see you. Good eye, baby. Good eye. Boy, he had his tail out and everything. I see him. Remember, don't cast right at it. There you go. Good spot. Let it sit. Let him find it. All right, now bounce it. Bounce it. Let it sit. Jack him. Nice job, baby. Good job. Good job. That was a good eat.
Oh, please tell me the camera is on.
It's on.
All right, guys, so now you see the 3 ways, my 3 favorite ways to find redfish, and then way to approach them and way to put a lure on them. Let's talk about where to find redfish. Redfish they have a wide range, and redfish would be anywhere from a dock line, as you've seen us do dock monster videos, to the jetties, to the shallowest marsh you can find in the Galveston Bay complex, or in Pensacola, Tampa, Florida, the Keys, wherever you're at, Slidell, Mississippi, Louisiana, wherever you're at, they're there. And eliminating water is the key to sight fishing. I may go, when I moved to Galveston, I moved to West Bay, I bought a house in Jamaica Beach, and I started prospecting. Every day I picked a new marsh system, and I would get as shallow as I could, and I would look for redfish. And then I would move to another system, and move to another system, and move to another system. And it took me a few months to find spots that consistently had redfish. One weekend, a spot would hold them, and it would have 100 redfish, and I would never see them there again. So over time, I tore apart the south shoreline and the north shoreline of West Galveston Bay, and I found areas where I can consistently see redfish. There may be one in there one day, there may be 100 in there the next time I go, but I know with some certainty that anytime the weather is right, the winds are light enough and the sun is high and the skies are blue and the water looks nice, I know with some certainty I can go to these spots and I can see some redfish. And you're gonna have to put the hours in to do the same thing. There's not one key that I can give you, there's not one clue that I can give you, there's not one place I can circle on a map and say this is where you sight fish. Sight fishing takes dedication, and it takes time. It takes some days where you don't see a fish. It takes days where you don't catch a fish. It takes weekends where you don't catch a fish. But sight fishing is rewarding once you figure it out. So I think my main thing I want to explain to you is be patient with sight fishing. If you want to be a sight fisherman, you're not going to go out every day and put a string or a fish together. You're not going to get to catch a limited fish. You're not going to fill the cooler. Sight fishing is more of a passion. It's more of an addiction than it is a style of fishing. Sight fishermen like myself, you'll hear us say like, hey, how was the day? Saw 30, hooked 1. We saw 15 fish, we couldn't get them to eat. It goes in how many you see, not how many you catch with sight fishing a lot of times, because you find the spot and you may see 20 fish. None of them eat. You spook them all. They're not settled that day. To me, seeing 20 fish, that's a win. In my mind, I saw 20 fish. I'm happy. It's like sitting in a climbing stand in public deer woods with a bow in my hand. How was your hunt? I saw 4, nobody was in range. That's a successful hunt to me. I saw 4 deer. I was in the right place. No one came within bow range. Sight fishing is the equivalent of bow hunting deer. I saw 6 fish. They were all too far away. I couldn't put a shot on them. I saw 10 today. They were spooky. They wouldn't let me feed them. So just keep in mind that sight fishing, there are a few guys that can go out there and fill the box doing it. I'm not one of them. Sight fishing is an endeavor of passion, and it's something you have got to love to do it. If you're going to spend the time to find the fish, and then spend the time it takes to learn to read those fish, and then spend the time to stay on the fish, you're going to spend a lot of weekends not stretching a line. You're going to spend a lot of time scaring fish. You're going to spend a lot of time getting your boat stuck. That's just the truth, guys. I'm not trying to deter you from sight fishing. I'm just trying to give you a few pointers that when you get out there and you've sight fished 2 days and you haven't caught a fish, that's sight fishing. That's what it is, and that's the addiction to it. So where we're looking for these fish at is any shoreline, any marsh, any oyster bar, any shoreline system where the fish are. You found the birds, you found them waking, or you found water clear enough to look for them, guys. Anywhere in the Galveston Bay complex, any shoreline you want to go to. If you look on a map in West Bay and you pick a shoreline, anywhere from Jamaica Beach to Sea Isle, from Sea Isle to San Luis, from Jamaica Beach back to the Galveston Bay Bridge, any of those shorelines, they hold redfish. You have to put the time in to find out when, why they're there. I can't give you a noon on Sundays with 68-degree water temperature, they're going to be at this spot, because sight fishing just doesn't work that way. Anywhere in West Bay, anywhere in East Bay where there's a shoreline, there's redfish. And they will tail there on certain days, they will push there on certain days, and they will crash the shorelines there on certain days. You got to put the time in to find them, guys. So we've talked about what to look for, the 3 ways they'll present themselves, and we kind of roughly talked over location. I can't give you a whole lot more information on location, guys. What I can do later on in another video is we'll pull up a marsh system and I'll give you an idea of what I would look for. We'll do that in another video, and that'll be how to find redfish. And we'll pick a marsh that's not here close to Galveston we'll pick a marsh system that I've never fished in my life, something east or west of here, and I'll look at it on Google Maps with you guys, and we'll break that down, and I'll tell you where I would go. One of the things I prefer is I like to fish on a lee side, or the side that's not windblown when I'm sight fishing. Obviously, windblown banks hold bait, windblown baits hold trout, they hold flounder, they hold redfish. But if I'm sight fishing, I want to be on the lee. If I'm fishing West Bay and the wind's straight out of the south, I'm fishing the south shoreline. And I'm going to find wherever I can get back where it's the slickest and the calmest and the water's not disturbed and turned up. If it's out of the north, I'm fishing the north shoreline, or I'm fishing back in Greens, or I'm fishing back in Karankawa, or I'm back in Chocolate, or I'm back in Jones Lake. I play the wind, and I try to find the calmest, slickest area I can to sight fish. Is it right? I know a lot of guys disagree with me on that, but that's how I sight fish. I like to sight fish crystal clear, calm water. I'm okay if the water's stained, but I want it calm. I want to see every wake, every push, every shrimp that jumps. I want to be able to see it and key in on it. So if you're trying to figure out where to go, say next weekend you watch this video and you want to go sight fish reds and the winds are straight out of the southwest, well, look on the map. Go to Google Maps or go to Windfinder or go to windy.com, and they have a satellite overlay, and you can look and see which way that wind is coming from. So go in there and look and see where that wind's coming from. Look at the most protected shoreline and start fishing there. And that'll help you start figuring out what you're looking for. There's a lot of grass flats in Galveston Bay that a lot of people don't know about. Those grass flats keep the water crystal clear in the summer, and they keep them crystal clear into the fall before the grass dies because the water gets too cold. Those flats are crystal clear, and they remind me so much of Pensacola, Florida, back home. They remind me of being home. The water's gin clear, the grass is 12 inches deep, and it's perfect. And those redfish lay in there like pumpkins. I call it Pumpkin Patch. It's one of our favorite spots. And you just see them laying in there. Look like Pumpkin Patch. So guys, play the wind, put the sun at your back, find water that's calm, clear if you can, watch for birds on shorelines, and watch for pushes, watch for mud boils, and you'll learn to identify a redfish push from a mullet push. Mullet push is a fine point. It's a little more erratic. Redfish push is going to be a big rounded wake, and it's going to be a much more streamlined, he's going one place. Learn to read those, and you'll be amazed at how many sheep's head and black drum you'll see when you're red fishing, or when you're sight fishing reds too, guys. Small lures, those sheep's head are a blast to catch up at 8-9 inches of water. I hope this information has helped you. I hope this clears up a little bit of the stigma around sight fishing. And like I said, later on in another video, we're going to dig down in and we'll get us a map and we'll look at it together, and I'll show you the spots I would find there to go, and hopefully that helps someone out. Just remember, guys, stay positive. You've got to eliminate a lot of water where they say 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. If you're new to sight fishing, the first day you pull up and the first shoreline you look at, there may not be a redfish on it. Keep looking, keep grinding, stay positive, dedicate time to sight fishing. Don't worry about putting a box of fish together if you want to be a sight fisherman. Worry about finding fish. And find your spot. Don't worry about where everybody else is at. Don't worry about where everybody else is pulling or where you saw a boat wading. Find your own spots, find your own fish, and you'll find out that consistently when you find your own fish, there's usually not anyone on it. You're not competing for anyone to get to that spot because no one knows about it. They didn't find it. You found that spot, you prospected it, you learned the tides, you learned the shoreline, you learned the guts, you learned the creeks, you learned the oyster bars, and you learned where the fish set up. So every time you go there, the chance of someone being there is slim to none. And then you can stay on those fish a little more consistently, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to help you out. I know this was a very brief overview, but we'll get in more depth a little bit later, guys. Y'all have a great weekend. Thank you for everything, and we'll see you out there.